The bull. This powerful and resilient animal, covered in muscle, with its massive neck, its strong back, and long tapering horns, is a challenge made by nature. Humans learned to master its ancestor, the Aurochs, to make them an indispensable work partner. By our side, cattle, bulls, oxen, and cows have cleared trees, pulled stones, and turned the earth while providing us with essential elements for food and clothing. 10,000 years ago, they conquered the plains and meadows. Today, they are found on all continents of our planet. 10 million years ago, a small, discreet, and solitary mammal lived in the forests of Eurasia. From Europe to present-day Pakistan, it liked to graze in damp glades and marshes on the edge of the woods. The animal looked much like small modern-day antelopes. This little horned beast is called Eotragus. It is the common ancestor of the now famous biological subfamily Bovini. The mysterious creature's population evolved over time, adapting to different environments of a changing planet. 5 to 10 million years ago, Eotragus gave birth to about 20 species. Humans choose to domesticate some of them and then decide to link their destiny to this incredible animal family. This is how zebu, yak, water buffalo, and taurine cattle were born. The vital link which unites humans with the taurine cattle has remained intact in the northeast of Turkey, at the foot of the Caucasus, not far from where the domestication of the ancestor Aurochs began over 10,000 years ago. Umit is a breeder of Yanikli, a local primitive breed. Each year, he perpetuates a 1,000-year-old ancestral tradition, the transhumance.
Before leaving for the highlands, we adorn the foreheads of our cows, calves, and bulls with pearl necklaces and woolen wreaths that we made. It is both to beautify our animals, but also to protect them against the evil eye.
5,000 years ago, humans already appreciated this horned beast for its endurance and its milk, and the summer trek up to the pastures was a highlight in their relationship with the animal. For Umit and his family, it still is. During one long day, Umit and all the other families in the valley lead this outstanding climber with its long limbs and narrow chest to its summer residence, the high prairies. It is the point of renewal, the emotion of walking in the rhythm with the animals while adapting to their moods. After a 7-mile climb, the summer pasture village emerges, clinging to the mountainside. For 2 months, people and animals will be inseparable here.
We all bring our animals here, where every family has their house with a stable on the ground floor. The animals get used to our voice and our smell. It recognizes us. Our closeness to our cows strengthens our bond with them. When I call one, she knows it's her, and she comes.
Cattle are at the very heart of Umit and the other breeders' lives. And these families, who live separated from each other in the valley the rest of the year, live together in this high-altitude village during the summer. The cattle brings these people together.
In the valley, all the houses in our village are scattered. But here on the plateau, the houses are close to each other. So there is more cohesion and cordiality between inhabitants. During the summer, I can see a member of my family or a neighbor more easily. Without our realizing it, the animals unite us even more. On the plateau, we show more care and affection towards our neighbors and our friends. This beautiful energy, this tenderness, we receive it from our animals, and we transmit it to our neighbors and to our friends. So in the end, it's from the animals that we learned about affection and tenderness, and we maintain that in the highlands.
Life in the summer pastures has always followed the same rhythm. Everyone has their place.
Hayvanların sağımını sabahleyin
Our mothers, our sisters, our wives go down to the stable early in the morning for milking.
erken saatte herkes ahırına
At this time of day, the cows have a lot of milk.
iniyor. Hayvanın sütü fazla ya. Bu sütün
To avoid harming the animal, we take a little more than half for ourselves,
yarısından fazlasını biz kendimiz
and the
yapıyoruz.
baby calf drinks the
Geri kalan
rest.
kısmını dana sevmiyor.
Every morning after milking, a new ascent will be able to start in search of the best pastures. At the cowherder's whistle, they get underway.
Yaylaya çıkış amacımız o.
Every year,
Yaylada
the summer brings
arazi
goals
geniş,
for us to achieve.
otlağımız geniş.
Up on the plateau, the land is vast, and the pastures offer rich grasses to the animals, so they'll produce the best milk. Life at high altitude has a positive effect on the development of our animals.
Yaylaya çıkıyoruz.
In the harsh morning light, the herd begins to move towards the pastures at an altitude of over 8,000 feet.
Hayvanlar 2 ay
For 2
kalıyor.
months, we live in rhythm with these days. For 2 months, we are here with our animals. We take care of them, and they take care of us in a way.
Bu hayvanlar
These animals are both our friends and our livelihood.
hem de bir yani ticari amaçlı bir ekmek teknemiz diyelim.
Hadi gel, 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 gel.
Babam da önceden
My
bu işi
father
yapıyordu.
was a
Onun
breeder,
babası da hayvancı.
as was his father before him.
Geçim
It is our
kaynağımız
profession.
hayvancılık. Çoban bunları
The cow herder grazes the cows from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m.
başlayıp akşam 4
The first days, he is the one who brings them back to the village.
tekrar çoban geri getiriyor.
Then they
Ama
find their way
hayvanlar
home on their own.
kendileri geliyorlar.
His work
Çobanın
ends
geri
when
oradan
all the
bitiyor.
animals are
Bütün
back with
hayvanlar
us.
kendi evini bulabiliyorlar.
The herd only has one master protector bull. In the past, they fought for this position in nature. Today, the bulls are pitted against each other every year in the arenas of the valley, so that the dominant-dominated relationship is established far from the mountain pastures. This ensures that peace will reign between the males before the great transhumance.
Bu bir
It's not a
savaş gibi
war.
bir şey değil.
For us, this is a truly ancestral tradition.
Çok eski bir
Above all,
adetlerimiz.
there are no bad
Kesinlikle
intentions.
bir art niyeti yok.
These fights have been organized
Spor
for
amaçlı
years,
değil de
not
hayvanları,
as sport.
barıştırmak
The goal
amaçlı
is to reconcile
yürüyüş
the animals.
organizasyonu yıllardır var.
Güreş sonuçlanıyor.
Boğalarda
Bulls
kendi
fight
arasında
because they need a display of power between them to determine a leader. Bullfights have always been a natural occurrence. It is in the very nature of the beasts. If we didn't organize these controlled fights and reconcile them between themselves before the summer, they would fight in the mountains and cause harm. They could even kill other bulls. With bullfights, we avoid that danger.
boğa güreşi izlediğim
Watching bullfighting evokes very special feelings. Mostly when I watch my own bull, I want him to win.
zaman istediğim için boğamla beraber
I get excited, like I'm doing the fight with my bull.
daha da şey oluyor.
So it's as if it was no longer the bull, but me fighting.
O güreş yapıyormuş gibi oluyorum. Özen gösteriyorum hani.
I take care of him.
Yürürken ayağına
I take
taş
care
batmasın,
that he doesn't hurt himself from rocks or
ağaçlarla şey
trees when I
yaparken
walk him.
yaralanmasın. Hani bir anne baba
You know, a
çocuğuna
parent would
su
watch
içirir
over
ya.
his or her
Ama
child so that he wouldn't get sick,
üşütmesin.
so that he wouldn't get a
Boğam-
cold.
benim boğam da aynı.
It's the same with my bull.
Sırdaşım diyelim.
My bull is my confidant, my friend. When I scratch him in the barn, I talk to him to motivate him.
Yürürken de yine arkadan-
When he walks, I come up behind him and I also talk to him. I say,
Hadi
"Come on, my son."
böylelikle
Like this, when he hears my voice, when fighting, he looks at me and he adapts his fight.
Güreş ona göre kendi de ayarlıyor hayvan. Boğalar
Bulls are noble animals. They are beautiful beasts with regard to their structure and appearance. As they represent power, we watch over them as if they were the people of Artvin.
Like for Ümit and these families in the Turkish mountain pastures, there is a unique relationship between man and horned beasts. But where did it come from? How did humans manage to domesticate the wild ancestor into a docile animal? Ox, cows, and bulls, so many names for the same animals, whose forebearers are now extinct, the Eurasian Aurochs. The Aurochs were both feared and admired across Eurasia. It was the subject of numerous representations by prehistoric artists. Huge paintings are adorned with its effigy, as in the Hall of the Bulls in the Lascaux cave. And though it's not the only animal painted on the walls, the ancient humans seem to give it a special place. Measuring nearly 2 meters tall, with impressive horns and extraordinary strength, these characteristics have ended up attracting the attention of humans. The relationship of humans to these animals began 10,000 years ago. Residents of villages in Anatolia, in the south of present-day Turkey, had the idea of capturing and taming a few wild and impetuous herds in order to domesticate them. One witness to this relationship is the archaeological site Çatal Höyük near Konya. It is one of the oldest farming villages in the world. Located on the foothills of the Taurus Mountains, it tells us about the daily life of a village from the 6th millennium BC. For the archaeologist Silir Silingyaoglu, who studies this momentous period of human history, everything here reflects a civilization centered around the bull, representations, trophies, and even the first traces of its domestication. The domestication processes are quite complex. Aurochs were too aggressive, very powerful. Their horns were very large and quite strong. It seemed to be an animal unsuited for domesticating. But if you select those that are neither too aggressive nor too big, or you choose the young and domesticate them, in a few generations, you will create a new species, because this process causes quite significant changes in the animal. Siler and her team have discovered numerous fossilized bones at the site which bears witness to the animal's morphological evolution. Under human influence, certain characteristics are strengthened, while also improving its docility. The species passes here from wild to domesticated. The biggest difference is that domesticated animals are much smaller than their ancestor, the Aurochs. We also notice that their horns are also getting smaller. Thanks to the comparison of bones from wild aurochs and those aurochs being domesticated found on the site, the researcher has managed to describe how the species evolved in contact with humans. We can say that a new type of relationship was born between animals and people from the Neolithic era. Whole new species of animals are beginning to live with humans and to share the same spaces with him, taking the place of wild species that were previously consumed as game. And the fact that animals are kept in living quarters created a whole new relationship and a whole new way of life for animal populations. Aside from providing reliable meat to Neolithic humans, the domestication of aurochs played a role in the development of certain derived foods. First among these are, of course, milk and dairy products.
özellikle süt üretiminin
It is now widely accepted that these products resulting from domestication had a positive impact on human health.
da olumlu bir etki yaptığı düşünülmektedir.
The relationship between humans and Aurochs was built over hundreds of years, evolving from game and symbolic figure to a true partner. Its domestic descendants made it possible to develop an agriculture based on breeding and working the land. To achieve these ends, humans selected from the Aurochs, and from selection to selection, they reduced its size and made the animal more docile. It became an element of power and currency of exchange as the oxen spread with human movements from Mesopotamia to North Africa 5,000 years before our era, then a millennium later from the east to Europe. As a clearer of the forest, it accompanied the sedentarization and the conquest of the prairies. Portugal still retains traces of this transformation of the environment to benefit humans. Without the small but sturdy cachena, man could never have cleared and plowed these mountainous lands. And is always here, while waiting to be called upon to work in the fields, the herd is left to roam free in the brush, which they maintain for the benefit of the entire ecosystem.
Vamos, go!
The cachena breed is one of the smallest breeds in Europe, and maybe in the world. It has elongated horns, a very long muzzle, which allows it to feed in places where other animals do not go. It's because of this that it's called cachena, or cabreira, the cabreira goat, because it manages to feed itself in the middle of the cliffs, like goats do. In the ecosystem, this breed has a positive impact, a great value, because she keeps the mountain cleaner. She's an animal which cleans the mountain and doesn't allow this environment to have too many bushes. The cachena also plays an important role in the pollination of the mountain, because with a lot of cachena in these mountains, all the manure they produce helps in the pollination of the whole mountain ecosystem. The cachena is an animal that defends itself quite well against the wolf. When they are attacked by wolves, they form a circle. They moo, and they form this circle, which the wolf cannot enter into. Although the cachena defends itself quite well from wolves, in ancient times, traps were needed. These traps made it possible to catch the wolves, which attacked not only the cachena, but decimated other animals as well. The trap was round, and we put a goat inside the trap as bait for the wolf. Then we hunted with beaters. The neighboring Sierra de Soajo populations came together and formed a giant human line. The human line gradually moved towards the mountain, and the wolf had to flee as high as possible. And when it got near the trap, It entered between two walls that converged on the trap. It was forced to fall into it. When the goat bleated, the wolf jumped into the trap, but could no longer come out thanks to the lintels placed on top of the round construction. That's how we managed to protect the cachenas, the goats and the sheep we had on the top of the mountain.
A little further north in Sistelo, the cachena has helped to shape this rocky and steep landscape. The cachena helped humans to move equipment and carted stones to convert these steep slopes into cultivable terraces. Docile under Pedro's eye, the cows turn over the earth and still cart stones to maintain the low walls.
This landscape, which was created by humans, was also created by cows and ox, which helped shape it. They are the ones who made it possible to transport the material, the stones for the houses, and the development of the terraces. It is still necessary to work with these animals today, because there are lots of places where we cannot work with tractors. The only way to work on these terraced plots is with the animals. It's an ideal and essential technique for working the soils, which allows them to be ventilated, to preserve them, and in this way keep a young and intact landscape.
Podemos ter uma paisagem jovem, por assim dizer. Funciona como todo. Tem que ser.
The role of the person who stands in front of the animal is essential. He must know how to guide it. The role of the one placed on the side is just as important. She or he must know how to direct it and touch it. And during the plowing, it's important to choose the right person on the plow. They must be light, so as not to add too much stress for the animal. The three parts work as one. If one of them is missing, you cannot control the hitch properly. In order to obtain an animal capable of plowing and towing correctly, it's important to train it. It must be calm and know his master's way of walking as it pulls the plow. And this point is undoubtedly the most important, because if the animal has a good relationship with its master, it will follow him. If a beautiful relationship unites the two, the ensemble works as a whole, like a machine, to perfection. This work is therefore very important, because if the ox does not work regularly, it can lose its know-how. And the same goes for humans. If we do not work enough with others, with our neighbors and animals, our know-how will also be lost.
In this Portugal, proud of its bovine history and attached to its tradition, one breed in particular embodies this powerful relationship that has linked them for millennia. A more massive cousin of the cachena, the Barossa is considered by the Portuguese as the largest Lusitanian bull breed. A work beast, a beast for competitions, breeders like Juan revere it.
It's a very strong breed, which adapts well to cold and rain. It's a mountain breed. It has the essential characteristics to survive in the middle of nature. From a morphological point of view, the animal must have a powerful chest and a broad neck.
Juan is one of those who perpetuate bullfighting. As in Turkey, the practice was started to establish the hegemony of a single bull over the herd. But here, these battles have become a real sporting tradition, which is part of this cult of the bull, with its naturally belligerent behavior.
When animals win a prize or a fight, they are the ones who win, not the breeder who merely helped to showcase them. The one who really wins is always the bull.
When the animal is victorious, it gains the respect of its owner and his love. The word is not too strong to qualify the relationship that exists between Juan and his fighting bull Bonito. 2,000 pounds of muscle and bones, extraordinary measurements, and a skeleton of remarkable resistance. By observing these bulls, we understand why humans have depended so much on this animal, which embodies a certain perfection.
Bonito and me, it's a funny story. I raised him since he was little. He's always been very docile with me. Although he is a fighting bull, he knows when to be calm and peaceful and when to be combative. We understand each other, and he's happy when we're together. But Bonito is at the end of his life. He no longer fights. The last fight I took him to was 2 months ago. He positioned himself, but turned his head away and refused the fight. He made me understand, don't take me here anymore. It's over. And now he's here with me. It's hard for me to have to put him down, but that's how it is. The animal's life inevitably ends one day. I'll be sad on that day. I don't even know how I'm going to do it. I will lose the animal that I love the most. I want to go with Bonito to the slaughterhouse, see him, and drink a drop of his blood. It's something that I want to keep for the rest of my life.
Over time, without a doubt, humans have developed an intense relationship with animals. And after having spread throughout Eurasia and contributing to the development of agriculture up to the Middle Ages, the animal by our side begins a new conquest. The ox crosses the Atlantic aboard the vessels of Christopher Columbus between 1493 and 1521. From Florida and the Mexican coasts, large herds allow men to eat and clothe themselves. At the head of the procession, the animals pull the settlers' wagons to conquer the American West. The ox reached the West Coast around 1806. The gold rush of the 1850s completed the conquest of the vast plains of the far west. The ancestor of these valiant cattle is the famous Longhorn, still present in America. It became a symbol of the glorious past. It has since given way to more modern and much more productive races. The Longhorn, this myth of the conquest of the West, a familiar figure of the Wild West, still endures today. And America's oldest breed of cattle remains the beating heart of the Great Plains, like with the Maguires. When they move a group of around 50 heads, the cowboys work as a team and perpetuate an ancestral know-how that is a reflex for them. The image of the Western in all its glory. In the 1880s, the story began between the Maguires and the Longhorn, enduring with its square silhouette, its thin legs suitable for walking, its speckled color, and huge horns whose span can exceed 6 feet. Ever since, this breed, descendants of the first Hispanic bullfighting settlements, enabled them to survive the terrible droughts of the 1930s the Maguire's bond with the Longhorn has been unwavering.
My family had the opportunity to come here during the land run, which was over 125 years ago, to be able to establish a homestead. And in doing so, when they did that, they didn't know at the time that 125 years later, their descendants would be making a living on the land and what they had started. And for me to know that my great-great-great-grandfather worked the same land that I'm working, it's almost, I can't put it hardly into words. It's just something very special. You know, one thing with the Longhorns is, you know, these animals are animals that live for 22 to 27 years. So some of those animals, you know, you're with an animal that long, you can't help but develop a relationship with an animal after being with them for that long. A lot of times we'll continue to just keep them until they decide to leave us. And we'll give them a good home until that day comes. Sometimes we just let them retire. They've earned it.
The Longhorns are not just a myth. These animals demonstrate undeniable qualities, which are the basis of their reputation.
For examples, the quality of their milk, not just the amount of milk that the cow is producing, but the actual quality of that milk seems to be really beneficial for the calves that I have raised. And another thing, that these cattle seem to be a little bit more resistant to certain diseases than some of the English breeds.
The value of Longhorn's meat has been the subject of scientific studies. It turns out to be leaner than a chicken fillet.
So there is a huge health aspect because we also don't use any steroids or growth hormones in our cattle. There's so many attributes that the Longhorn can add to the beef industry that, again, I think that we would be losing more than we'd be gaining by trying to phase out the Longhorn. And not to mention the fact of, you know, they're just a beautiful animal. They're pretty majestic. They've got a lot of history.
From the beginning, humans have noticed in the animals an ardent and combative character inherited from their wild ancestor. And humans imagined a large number of games and rituals allowing them to measure themselves against the horned beast. A way to prove one's bravery and to celebrate this human-animal bond, like here in the United States with the famous bucking bull, which is deeply rooted in local culture. The ranches in the state of Oklahoma, like those in neighboring Texas, supply the rodeos with many feisty bulls and young cowhands ready to do battle. Their objective is very simple: to try to stay on the animal's back for a handful of long seconds. Lance Boyd is one of the most successful bucking bulls breeders.
These cattle are somewhere in between being wild and domesticated cattle. And some of them you cannot be in a pen with because they'll just chase you up the fence and try to get you. They're herd animals, they're herd-bound animals, and that was the survival instinct. And that's the survival instinct passed down from millions of years ago. Through selective breeding over years and years and years is what gets these bulls to do what they do, that make them the athletes that they are. And they're somewhat wild. And so we'll get them used to being touched, and that's when we start, after we do that a few times, we'll start using the training dummy, the box that we use to train them. It's a remote controlled device that doesn't shock the bulls, other than that it is a weight on their back. It weighs about 10 pounds, and they're trying to get this thing off their back. To make a great bucking bull, you want the bull to have speed and intensity when he bucks. You want him to leap high in the air. You want him to kick with his hind legs as high as he can kick, and move like an athlete. These bulls are athletes. They're trained and fed like athletes. We look for athletic ability in them. Some of them you can tell almost when they're born, the way that their bodies are built, that you just know that bull is going to be an athlete.
Humans have worked on the instincts of the beast and his innate characteristics so that the bulls could become champion bucking bulls. Lance Boyd's bulls are particularly feared in Wyandotte. In this temple of the bucking bull, the bond between man and bull is celebrated in the most exaggerated way possible. It is taken very seriously. Cowboys put their lives on the line to stay on the back of the beast for just a few seconds.
We buck bulls as a sport, just like soccer, football, any other sport. This is a cowboy sport that dates back to the 1800s. The goal of the bull is to buck the rider off before the 8-second whistle. That's the ultimate goal of your bull. If you have a bull that's getting ridden every single time that you buck him, he's probably not a really good bull. The relationship between the rider and the bull, it's a dance. They're both trying to do their job to the best of their ability, and the one is trying to beat the other. The cowboy is trying to ride the bull, and the bull is trying to get the cowboy off of his back. The rider is just along for the ride. The rider's making counter moves to try and stay in the center of that bull, to stay balanced and stay forward and not get thrown out over the front or off to the side of the bull. And so there's nothing the rider can really do to change what that bull's going to do. They're just along for the ride. Some of these bulls get really wild when they're in the bucking chute, and it takes time to train them that everything's okay in there. We don't ever give any shots. We don't do any type of doctoring in the bucking chute because we want the bucking chute to be a place for them that isn't associated with pain or any type of negativity. We want it to be a positive experience for them because we want them to do well. And if they're agitated or disturbed in some way, it can make that a negative experience, and then they won't do well.
Behind the games, behind the celebration, behind the love and worship of horned beasts, there is also a huge business, a real industry where mass production and profitability prevail. The oldest races, sometimes thousands of years old, are replaced by more recent races. The Black Angus, a meat breed of Scottish origin, is the perfect example. This champion breed of beef production is genetically improved from generation to generation in order to be ever more resistant and productive. Nowadays, it makes up most of the American herd. Cattle meat breeds represent more than 70 million heads that today supply the country's steakhouses. brought to the Oklahoma National Stockyards Company, the official cattle market. A world in itself, a unique atmosphere where Stetsons rub shoulders with ostrich boots. Oklahoma National Stockyards Company, a man's world, led by a woman, Kelly.
So when cattle arrive at the stockyards, they are yarded in each individual firm's pens, and they're sorted. They are weighed. Everything must be weighed by our federal regulations. When they enter the ring, there is a ring man that will set the cattle in. And by that, they are throwing a market price out. So if he says 150, that's where the auctioneer will start the bidding at. The live auction method is a method of true price discovery. And then the gentlemen and women that are buyers you'll see them raise their hands until the cattle sell out to the final bidder. Most of the buyers have kind of a special thing that they will do. Some may be on their phone and just barely tap their finger on the phone. So the auctioneer has to be very quick and watching the whole crowd as he's selling his chant. It's very lively, a lot of yelling and friendly, jobbing here and there, but it's a very lively and fast-paced process. And it's not uncommon for us on a sale day to sell over 700 head of cattle in 1 hour. I believe that when you are born into the industry, it just stays with you. You can't wash it off. You can't wash it out of your blood.
But Kelly is not only the manager of the cattle market, she is also a breeder, from father to daughter for several generations.
The ability to care for an animal that is 1,200, 1,300, even 1,500 pounds, so 10 times bigger than you are, and know that animal trusts you, it keeps you grounded. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is if we didn't care for the cattle the way that we did, so who else is going to?
Most of the animals traded in the market run by Kelly will not continue to live in green pastures. Despite the ritualized aspect of North American cattle breeding and the conviviality of its traditions, the reality of modern beef production sends a shiver down the spine. Today, the majority of the country's beef herd grow up in feedlots, those grassless pens where grains and pellets replace grasses, where lack of physical exercise make the muscles so fatty that the health of animals is only maintained with antibiotics. Because the industry must satisfy the appetite of Americans who consume 65 pounds of beef per capita per year. With this ultra-intensive production, the United States illustrates the evolution of our relationship with cattle. From an essential auxiliary, a cherished figure, to raw material exploited and produced on the assembly line, endangering the wealth of races, the know-how of animals, and their privileged relationship with man. Today, cattle are the most bred mammal on Earth, with a worldwide herd of 1.7 billion heads. The infamous feedlots symbolize the gigantic and excessive nature of a distorted relationship with a highly negative impact on our planet. And what if tomorrow, breeding returned to a more qualitative dimension, like the Longhorns or other ancient breeds? Would a return to the origins be possible? Morphologically close to their ancestors, races that came close to extinction have discreetly adapted to the ecosystems where man has placed them and sometimes even forgotten. They now seem to embody the salvation of the man-bovine relationship. This return to the origins, a world where man and animal live in harmony in a relationship of respect and recognition, is a path that some breeders are now trying to adopt in France, in Aquitaine. On the banks of the Garonne, the Aquitaine Breed Conservatory supports the rehabilitation of old varieties, breeds that have fallen into oblivion, among them the Bordelaise, a small breed that almost disappeared in 1960 that several breeders are rediscovering and appreciating.
My fight is to preserve this breed because it's one of the weakest breeds in France. There are less than 200 cows in all. They were once recognized as the best dairy cows from France. They were exported to Indochina in 1920. They were everywhere in the Aquitaine region and all over France. And after World War II, the agricultural system switched to more efficient, more industrial quality cows and small primitive races. And France's old breeds began to disappear, including the Bordelaise.
Not far from the prestigious Bordeaux vineyards, the young organic farmer practices subsistence farming, in which breeding is complementary to other farm activities. And every day, he notices that the Bordelaise breed has a way of life that is more respectful of the environment than most of its cousins.
The goal is not to keep it in a museum or a zoo and to say, here is a Bordelaise, it's pretty, but we don't do anything with it. I want to work with the conservatory and make my small contribution to rebuilding, saving the race that's becoming extinct. And for me, the Bordelaise is totally suitable for living on the banks of the Garonne, since historically there were plenty of them in the wetlands. It's very well suited to this environment, to this type of grass. They maintain a territory, they maintain biodiversity, and by saving them, we're also putting back on the consumer's plates so they can enjoy good, healthy products. And we just intervened by caring for them and the calves.
Every year in August, his calves are weighed. The data allows the conservatory to better understand this breed, which was saved from extinction a short time ago. You have to catch them, measure them, pet them, recalling the strong bond that unites men and their cows.
255.
I grew up on the family farm. My father gave names to his cows and calves. My grandfather also. And I called them by their first name. And today, I do the same. I give names to my animals. When there is one who's tapping on the other, I shout her name and she immediately knows I'm talking to her, and she stops.
Animals are at the heart of life on the farms, where close links are forged between the breeder and his animals.
We bring our calves to the slaughterhouse ourselves. We manage to detach ourselves, but there is always an emotional bond. And as I often say, that is part of a sacrifice, as since the dawn of time. If we want to take care of the mothers, the other cows, and the bulls, we also have to run the farm economically. And even when we bring them to the slaughterhouse, we talk to them, and they stay calm, relaxed. And when it's time for the slaughter, I manage to disconnect. When I get my meat, I almost thank them for feeding us and allowing us to take care of them and the rest of the herd.
The rehabilitation of the Bordelaise illustrates the renewal of the human-animal relationship. The animal adapts perfectly to its environment, and humans act in concert with it. The breed is capable of making the most of unhealthy or inaccessible areas, such as industrial wasteland, abandoned farmland, or plots prone to flooding. Further south, in the mountains of the Basque Country, there is a unique breed that contributes in unexpected ways to this balance. the bêtisieux. It is a result of a cross-dating from the Middle Ages between aurochs, which were disappearing, and domestic cows. Considered a poor milk producer, they were set free in the mountains, yet mysteriously they survived. Today, only 300 of these little cows and red bulls with shaggy hair and protruding bones remain, a herd of relics. Free as the air, grazing and trampling on the vegetation, these bêtisieux, who belong to no one, maintain and enrich the landscape in a unique way, just as their wild ancestors once did. The bêtisieux are so closely associated with this territory that they are now part of both the biodiversity and local culture. Faced with the challenges of tomorrow's world, preserving this breed is one way of restoring the precious link between humans and cattle. It is also a way of relinking the wild world and civilization, as with the Aurochs, the legendary animal it all started with.